I am oh so tired of this conversation, man. I am. I'm sick of it. Because there's actually some justification for it, but everybody's focusing on the wrong justification. Quite honestly. Like, it's one of those arguments where there is actually maybe a little bit of a conversation that needs to be had, but everybody seems to be focused on the wrong thing with it. And the clip I'm going to borrow is from a podcast with Tim Howard and Landon Donovan, who are having a conversation about basically how many CONCACAF teams should go to the World Cup, right? These are two guys that dominated my childhood. These are two heroes of the U.S. national team. I mean, Landon Donovan helped guide the U.S. to a World Cup quarterfinal, or we probably should have been able to get through against Germany to the semis, but that's neither here nor there, right? And Tim Howard is just the iconic American goalkeeper of the resurgence of American soccer, right? And so they're doing this podcast out of Unfiltered Soccer or something, whatever it is, but not a bad podcast. And they're just talking about how, like, CONCACAF, basically, the announcements come out, CONCACAF is going to have 6 spots for World Cup qualifying in 2030, right? It has 6 spots now. It actually has a chance to get 8 teams in, because as the hosting confederation or something, there's like an extra playoff spot. So we normally send one team to the playoff. Now there's another team that's gone to the Intercontinental playoff. So both Jamaica and Suriname are at the Intercontinental playoff. If they both win, right, which is not super likely at all, then there will be 8 CONCACAF teams there. And that has sparked this conversation where Tim Howard's on one side and Landon Donovan's at least playing devil's advocate. I'll let this start here.
Explain this to me then. CONCACAF, you said, gets 6 teams and then a 7th goes to a playoff.
Correct.
I'm on record as saying CONCACAF should never get 7 teams to the World Cup. You know how
okay, this is the part of the argument before I don't want to let this get too far out of hand, because I know what you're probably thinking. He's from CONCACAF. He's going to defend them. It's a fair conversation. CONCACAF probably should have 4 or 5, just based off of population of the continent, number of national teams ranked inside the top 100, whatever metric you want to use. 6 is a little high. It's probably 1 high, right? But it's a conversation that that I acknowledge is probably worth having, right? Because the way the expansion worked is there used to be 12 European teams. Now there's 16, right? Because the way that they try to limit Europe so that it's the World Cup and not just the Euros all over again is that Europe can't be more than 33% of the World Cup. So 12 is 33% of 36, 16 is 33% of 48. If anybody didn't know that before, you know it now. That's why Europe stays 33%. You can't go over that. So they have 16 spots, right? Africa goes from 5 to 9. Asia goes from 4.5 to 8. Okay, so there's doubling, almost doubling happening in all these other spots, because Europe can't go over 33%, right? So you see Africa go up to 9. You see Asia go up to 8. Maybe Asia should go to 9 just to the number of fucking people in Asia, right? That is by far the most populous continent, and you want to maybe give those teams more opportunities to go in there. They're bigger countries than exist in CONCACAF. Oceania goes from a half spot to a whole spot, the honorary New Zealand qualifying spot at the World Cup, until Fiji randomly steals it once, and it's the coolest story of all time. And CONCACAF goes from 3.5 to 6.5, right? Near double. That is, of course, because if you were probably metering this out fairly, you'd go a little over 16 with Europe. I'm okay with keeping Europe at 16. And as a result of that, maybe Asia should have gotten 9, Africa gets 10, and CONCACAF gets 5. But I think they want to try and keep all the large continents somewhat close together. And CONCACAF is the footballing backwater of footballing backwaters. And so you're giving CONCACAF a little bit of an opportunity to develop. If you're keeping Europe at 16, you go 9, 8, 6, Oceania gets 1. Of course, South America is a completely different concept, right? South America's only got 10 teams. So it's just very bizarre. They've given 6.5 spots to South America, which on the surface, you look at that and you go, okay, they have the same number of spots as CONCACAF. CONCACAF has, I don't know exactly how many, at least 3 to 4 times as many countries competing as South America does. Now, obviously, if you take the bottom South American team, which this time was Chile, because they suck ass. I mean, they are fucking diabolically bad. If you take that Chilean team, they're probably going to be able to make it out of CONCACAF. I'm under no illusion about that. right? But South America is just an incredibly weird World Cup qualifying environment because every other continent except Oceania, which is also weird and unique, has a shitload of countries in it, CONCACAF included. And so, Africa is not a better footballing continent than South America. Asia is not, and obviously CONCACAF is not either. But there has to be some sort of qualifying process. There just has to be. The World Cup, if you just took every South American team every year and just put them in the World Cup, that's just obviously unfair to the global nature of the sport. And so, hell, the South American team that makes the Intercontinental Playoff is going to be the favorite every time they go. This time it's Bolivia, which means they're not necessarily as much of a favorite because they don't get to play in their mountain fortress. Right? But you're basically always going to be getting 7 South American teams in out of 10 countries, which is by far the highest qualification percentage, which I feel like honors, because I know there's going to be that South American argument, but I feel like qualifying 65% of your countries honors the fact that that is a very good continent, because that is obviously the highest percentage, not even close, right? For World Cup qualification. Now, my other sleeper theory is you could just combine CONCACAF and South America and just do like a new world qualifying, because we've got a lot of shitty countries, at least shitty at football in CONCACAF. And, it would give those countries experience playing against higher quality opposition. And it would give South America a more normal qualifying. But I feel like South America likes their qualifying, and I think CONCACAF qualifying is fun, so we can keep doing it this way too. But that is at least an argument that is worth having, because I acknowledge that 6, especially 6.5, with that extra playoff spot, probably more than CONCACAF deserves. But if you're keeping Europe at that point, I'm just summarizing my argument here. If you're keeping Europe at the point where they're only 33%, which I think works if you want to have a World Cup, then CONCACAF really does get one of the kind of one extra spot. But I'll let them continue.
How I feel about this. I love CONCACAF because that's our region.
You just don't care about the little countries.
I'm
a man of the people, so
I care about the
want
beautiful
every
game.
country.
I care about the beautiful game, not the game you're going to call in Houston. That's going to be 9-0.
Germany, Curacao.
I don't care about that game. That's not important to me, and it shouldn't be important to anybody else.
Let me play devil's advocate. Curacao, I don't know what you get for going to a World Cup as a federation. Tens of millions, $100 million, I don't know. Don't you think that gives them an opportunity now going forward? Whether they spend it that way or not, or like what happens to that money, who knows? But doesn't that give them an opportunity to build infrastructure, like create youth systems and help them?
Not at our, and I say our as in our global showcase soccer event. No, because what I would say to you is if you want to boost small island football federations, there's a company in Switzerland that has a lot of money. They can give that money and help boost smaller countries.
But not to this level. They can give them a few $1 million. What you get for qualifying for a World Cup changes. It's like when you talk about the FA Cup and like playing an away tie against United. That funds those little clubs for 6-10 years. Like this will fund Curacao soccer forever,
I guess.
So this is the part of the argument that I hate. Because you look at it and you go, well, CONCACAF shouldn't get 6 spots or whatever. But then you point at Curacao, right? Because Curacao is a national team that has only existed for 12 years because of the breakup of the Netherlands Antilles national team. So it's a new concept. Not a lot of people are familiar with it. People don't know where it is on the map, and they know that the population is only 140,000. Don't factor in the fact that there's another 140,000 Curacao descended people in the Netherlands, meaning that their national pool is twice as big, and they've got 140,000 people living in the Netherlands, going through those academies and developing a national team that's capable of doing what they just did. But just because there's 6 spots doesn't mean Curacao has to make it. Using the fact that Curacao actually made it devalues the qualification process. It makes it seem like because there's 6 teams that have made it from CONCACAF, obviously in this instance 3 were the hosts, right? So there's just 3 teams that qualified. But if you look at you go Curacao, well, Curacao made it because we have 6 teams. Curacao made it because teams that should make it didn't fucking beat them. Curacao qualified for the World Cup because 2 countries that have been to the World Cup before, Jamaica and Trinidad and Tobago, couldn't fucking beat them one time. All they had to do was beat them one fucking time. If you don't want Curacao to be at the World Cup, beat them. Even if there were 6 teams going, it doesn't mean the little YMCA down the street makes it. The Cayman Islands, the British Virgin Islands, Anguilla, I've learned how to pronounce it. They didn't just get to go. They don't get a free ticket. Fucking Costa Rica and Honduras are not going. Those are 2 teams that are pretty regular at the World Cup overall. They're not going because they couldn't beat Haiti. And so Haiti gets to go because they played the qualifying and they won it. Jamaica and Trinidad and Tobago have millions of people. They have actual professional footballers, a lot of whom who play in England and Scotland, and they couldn't beat Curacao. That's why Curaçao's there. Curacao isn't there because of some charity. And you shouldn't be able to use Curacao as an example and an excuse for like, well, that's why CONCACAF doesn't deserve enough spots. CONCACAF doesn't deserve 6 spots because CONCACAF doesn't have enough good. CONCACAF probably deserves 5 spots. But you know what? Even if there were 5 spots, that doesn't mean Curacao wouldn't have made it. Because to be honest, they played a better qualifying than Haiti did. And Haiti made it. They finished ahead, Curacao did, of 2 teams that saw a giant shining green light saying, you can go to the World Cup now. And they never lost to them. This was supposed to be Jamaica's spot or Trinidad's spot, and they didn't take it. Curacao did. So the argument about whether CONCACAF should have 6 spots is one thing that's worth having. But saying that Curacao is the reason just devalues the fact that Curacao beat some fairly legitimate national teams, a Jamaica team that has beaten either the U.S. or Mexico at the Gold Cup like 3 of the last 4 or 5 times. I can't remember what the stat is anymore. Right? A Trinidad and Tobago team that famously knocked the U.S. out of World Cup qualifying on the final day. And neither of them could beat fucking Curacao. They earned it because Europe's got the 33% rule and that distributes the qualifying places out to everybody else that way. They earned the spot. I refuse to live in a world where we use Curacao as the example as to why. Because there are multiple teams that are definitely, better, more talented than Curacao that just couldn't beat them. And I don't want to live in a world where the qualifying spots are already decided. Because that just makes the World Cup a whole lot less fun. It does.